Picture a Tuesday night in October 2021. A rainy evening in Edmonton, Alberta. The temperature is hovering just above freezing. And inside Commonwealth Stadium, something is happening that hasn't happened in 36 years. Canada are winning. Canada are winning a World Cup qualifier. Actually, scratch that. Canada aren't just winning. Canada are dominating. Alphonso Davies, that kid from a Ghanaian refugee camp who grew up in a hockey town, he's flying down the left flank. Jonathan David is pressing, hunting, terrorizing defenders. And when the final whistle blows on a 1-0 victory over Mexico, the players don't just celebrate, they erupt. They sprint into the crowd. They collapse on the pitch. Grown men in red and white, weeping, screaming, arms outstretched. Because this team had just sent a message to an entire continent. Canada are back. But here's the thing. Canada were never supposed to be back. For the longest time, Canada was the country that loved sport. Just every sport except football. They gave the world ice hockey, lacrosse, and basketball. They sent athletes to podiums at every Olympics. But the beautiful game, the World Cup, that was for someone else. Then everything changed. Today, Canada isn't just a participant in the 2026 FIFA World Cup. They are co-hosts, playing on home soil, in front of their own people, in cities that have never seen anything like what's coming. And they arrive at this tournament not as the polite neighbor who snuck in through the back door, but as a legitimate footballing nation with a generation of talent that has been turning heads across Europe for years. This is the story of Canada. Strap in. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we are working our way through all 48 nations competing at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Deep dives into every squad, every story, every piece of history that makes this tournament the most extraordinary sporting event on the planet. And today, we are in Canada. Now, if you asked most football fans to describe Canada's footballing identity 5 years ago, they might have struggled. Maybe a polite shrug. Maybe they have that one World Cup in 1986, right? And they'd be correct. Barely. But ask those same fans today, and you get a very different answer. Because this Canadian generation, this golden generation, has fundamentally rewritten what the world expects from the Maple Leafs. They qualified top of CONCACAF for Qatar 2022. They produced one of Europe's most electric left backs in Alphonso Davies. They have a striker in Jonathan David, who has been one of the most prolific players in League One for half a decade. And in 2026, they get to do all of this at home. Today we're going to cover it all. Where Canada stand heading into 2026. How they got here. The full history. The dark years. The rebirth. The legends. The moments. And the genuine, honest question that every Canadian football fan is asking right now. Just how far can this team go? Let's find out. Let's set the scene for 2026. Canada enters the tournament ranked in the mid to high 40s in the FIFA World Rankings, which honestly undersells what they are capable of on their best days. FIFA rankings are notoriously blunt instruments, and Canada's rating doesn't fully capture the quality of the individual players in their squad. As co-hosts, Canada qualified automatically. No grueling CONCACAF qualifying campaign this time around, which is a double-edged sword. On one hand, the players arrive fresh, without the accumulated pressure of months of do-or-die fixtures. On the other hand, they've had to manufacture competitive edge through friendlies, Nations League football, and the Gold Cup, rather than earning it in the crucible of proper qualifying. The head coach leading Canada into this tournament is Jesse Marsch, the American-born former RB Leipzig and Leeds United manager, who took over the national side with a mandate to build on the Qatar momentum. Marsh brings a high-intensity, gegenpressing philosophy that suits several of Canada's key players perfectly. The system demands energy, vertical passing, and relentless pressing. When it works, it's genuinely exciting to watch. The 2026 group draw placed Canada in a challenging but navigable group. They face tough opposition, but playing on home soil gives them an advantage that no FIFA ranking can fully quantify. Canadian fans are passionate now. The growth in grassroots support following Qatar 2022 has been remarkable. Attendances for national team friendlies have ballooned. Youth participation has surged, and there is a genuine sense that something has shifted culturally. Now the squad itself. Let's talk about the players. Alphonso Davies. We have to start there. There is no more important player in Canadian football history. Full stop. At Bayern Munich, Davies became one of the most recognizable left-backs on the planet. His sprint statistics are genuinely frightening. His ability to transition from defense to attack in seconds has defined Bayern's wing play for years. At international level, he is the spark. He is the symbol. When Davies gets the ball in space and faces up a right back, Canadian fans collectively lean forward. Jonathan David, the striker, the finisher. At Lille, David has been one of the most consistent goal scorers in France, a player with clinical finishing, intelligent movement, and the ability to score with both feet and his head. What makes David truly special is how well he links play. He's not just a penalty box predator. He's a complete center forward who has matured remarkably in the past 2 years. Then there's Tajon Buchanan, the Inter Milan winger who adds width, pace, and unpredictability to Canada's attack. Ismaël Koné at Marseille, controlling midfield with poise and physicality well beyond his years. Alistair Johnston, the Celtic right back who has become a reliable, aggressive presence in wide areas. Liam Millar bringing creativity from the flank. Steven Eustachio holding the midfield engine room together. And in goal, Maxime Crépeau, the experienced Vancouver-raised keeper who has paid his dues and arrived at this moment ready. The realistic ceiling for Canada? It's genuinely difficult to cap them. Quarter-finals would represent a historic achievement. But if the draw breaks kindly, and if Davies and David are at peak form, they are capable of beating almost any team on a given day. Their ceiling is higher than their ranking suggests. And on home soil, with a country finally ready to fall in love with football? Don't be surprised by anything. To understand where Canada is now, you have to understand where they came from. And the honest answer is, a long, long way back. The Canadian Soccer Association was founded in 1912, making it one of the older football associations in the Western Hemisphere. Canada played their first international match in 1924, a 4-0 loss to the United States, which, given what CONCACAF rivalry would come to mean over the following century, has a certain grim poetry to it. For the next 50-odd years, Canadian football existed in the background. The country was hockey. The country was lacrosse. Football was something immigrants played in their neighborhoods. The Italians, the Portuguese, the Eastern Europeans who brought their football culture with them across the Atlantic and kept it alive in community leagues and local pitches. The national team reflected this, a patchwork, a project, a dream deferred. Then came 1986, the 1986 FIFA World Cup in Mexico. Canada, astonishingly, qualified. It is, until 2022, the only World Cup appearance in their history, and the context of how they got there is as remarkable as the qualification itself. Under coach Tony Waiters, a small, underfunded squad defied expectations by winning CONCACAF qualifying. The players were part-time, semi-professional at best. They trained around jobs and family commitments, and somehow, they made it to Mexico. The tournament itself was brutal. Canada were drawn into one of the groups of death, facing France, Hungary, and the Soviet Union. They lost all 3 games without scoring a single goal, eliminated in the group stage. But the achievement, the mere fact of being there, was extraordinary for a country that had no professional football infrastructure to speak of. After 1986, though, Canadian football went backwards. There's no other way to say it. The country failed to qualify for any subsequent World Cup for 3.5 decades. There were brief moments of hope, talented players emerging, promising qualifying campaigns that ultimately fell short. But the structural foundations simply weren't there. Canada lacked a domestic league of meaningful quality. The best Canadian players drifted to the United States, to Europe, or away from football entirely. The low points were genuinely painful. Canada finished last in CONCACAF qualifying campaigns. They lost to countries with a fraction of their resources. The fan base dwindled. The national sport conversation moved on. But here's the thing about those dark years. Quietly, underneath the surface, something was being built. The Canadian Premier League launched in 2019, finally giving Canada a professional domestic league capable of developing talent at home. Youth academies expanded. The country's multicultural character, the waves of immigration from football-loving nations in Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America, and Europe, was finally being harvested as an asset rather than overlooked. And MLS franchises in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, despite the mixed feelings in football purist circles about the league, created pathways, exposure, and infrastructure. And then a generation of extraordinary talent simply arrived at once. Davies, born in a Ghanaian refugee camp, raised in Edmonton. David, born in Brooklyn to a Haitian Grenadian family, raised between New York and Canada. Buchanan, from Brampton, Ontario. Koné, from Côte d'Ivoire, raised in Montreal. Canada's golden generation is a story of immigration, of a multicultural country finally expressing its full sporting self. The 2022 World Cup qualifying campaign was the moment it all came together. Canada topped the CONCACAF octagonal, ahead of the United States and Mexico, for the first time in history. They clinched qualification with a game to spare. The players celebrated on the pitch at BC Place in Vancouver like they'd won the tournament itself. In some ways, they had. Qatar 2022 was a learning curve. Canada went out in the group stage, losing to Belgium, Croatia, and Morocco, though the Morocco match was desperately close, and the Belgium game produced one of the most controversial VAR decisions of the tournament. Alphonso Davies had a penalty saved by Thibaut Courtois. Canada lost 1-0. It hurt, but it also taught them. They belonged. And they came home knowing that 2026, on home soil, was their real moment. Let me tell you about Alphonso Davies in that Belgium game. November 2022, Al Rayyan, Qatar. Canada go a goal down. The atmosphere is heavy. And then, a handball. Penalty to Canada. Alphonso Davies, 21 years old, steps up. The entire country watching back home through the small hours of the morning, wrapped in blankets, hearts in mouths. He runs up. He strikes it. And Thibaut Courtois, one of the best goalkeepers on earth, dives left and saves it. It's a moment that will live in Canadian football memory, not as a triumph, but as a wound. Because in that moment, you could see exactly how close this team was. One goal, one penalty, a different history. Davies was named one of the best young players in the world that year by practically every major publication. But at international level, 2022 was a reminder that potential and achievement are separated by the finest of margins. He has spent the years since hungry to correct it. Born in a UNHCR refugee camp in Buduburam, Ghana, to Liberian parents, Davies spent his early childhood in one of the most precarious circumstances imaginable before his family emigrated to Canada through a refugee resettlement program. He grew up in Edmonton. He was playing youth football for the Edmonton Strikers, then the Vancouver Whitecaps Academy, then the first team at age 15. Bayern Munich came calling when he was 17. He moved to Germany at 18 and never looked back. His story is genuinely one of the most remarkable in world football. Not just the talent, the trajectory. From a refugee camp to the Champions League final. From Edmonton to the Allianz Arena. And now, in 2026, Davies will play a World Cup in the country that gave him a home. If that doesn't give you chills, check your pulse. Jonathan David is a different kind of story, but no less compelling. Born in Brooklyn, David grew up between the United States and Canada before committing to the Maple Leaf. At Ghent, in Belgium, he announced himself to European football with 23 goals in his debut season. Lille paid 27 million euros for him in 2020, and he has been worth every euro and then some, becoming a serial top scorer in Ligue 1 with a composure in front of goal that belies his age. What David does that most strikers can't, he scores when it matters. He scores in big games. He scored for Canada against the United States in qualifying. He scored in clutch moments in Europe when Lille needed him most. He's the kind of player you build a World Cup strategy around. Then there are the legends from further back. Dale Mitchell, Canada's all-time leading scorer at the time of the 1986 World Cup, a rugged, creative midfielder who carried the team through qualification. Paul Peschke-Salido, the diminutive striker who played in England, playing for clubs ranging from Birmingham City to Fulham, earning over 50 caps, and representing a generation when Canada's best players had to leave to be taken seriously. And let's not forget, briefly, magnificently, the story of the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. This is often overlooked, but Canada won gold in football at the 1984 LA Olympics. Not professional football, not the fully capped World Cup, but Olympic football. And in their home continent, with a young squad full of character, Canada beat Brazil in the semifinals and Yugoslavia in the final to stand atop the podium. It remains the single greatest team achievement in Canadian football history, and it deserves more than a footnote. Now, Canada as a host. This is where this episode becomes something else entirely. The 2026 FIFA World Cup is a three-nation tournament, the first in history. Canada, the United States, and Mexico are co-hosting. It is an unprecedented arrangement born partly of commercial ambition and partly of genuine geographic logic. And for Canada specifically, it represents something that goes far beyond football. Canadian host cities include Toronto, Vancouver, and the city now confirmed as a match venue. Cities that don't have decades of World Cup mythology baked into their walls, but cities that are electrifyingly multicultural, vibrantly alive, and genuinely deeply in love with football in ways that the broader country is still catching up to. Toronto, Hogtown, is arguably one of the most football-obsessed cities in North America. Walk through Brampton, Scarborough, or Little Italy on a match day, and you'll find supporters bars packed with Italians, Portuguese, Jamaicans, Trinidadians, Ghanaians, Sri Lankans, watching their home countries with a passion that rivals anything in Europe. The city is a mosaic of footballing cultures. A World Cup in Toronto is a World Cup for the entire diaspora. Vancouver, meanwhile, Pacific, multicultural, and already a proud football city, thanks to the Whitecaps and a deep Asian-Canadian sporting culture, will host matches at BC Place, the stadium where Canada clinched their 2022 qualification. There's a poetic symmetry in that, the place where they celebrated one miracle, hosting another. The legacy of co-hosting 2026 for Canada extends beyond the matches themselves. Infrastructure investment, youth participation programs that have been explicitly linked to the tournament's arrival. A generation of Canadian children watching the national team play on home soil for the first time, dreaming. The country's professional league, the CPL, growing in visibility and investment off the back of World Cup excitement. Canada also contributes something important to the cultural fabric of this World Cup, a reminder that footballing identity doesn't have to be ancient or deep-rooted to be real. Canada's identity is being written right now, in real time, by players like Davies and David and Koné, and the millions of fans from every corner of the globe who call Canada home and have found in this national team something to believe in together. That might be the most Canadian sentence ever written, and it is absolutely, completely true. So here we are, 2026, the FIFA World Cup, and Canada's name is on the poster. Not as a co-host footnote, not as the team that qualified and squeaked through the group stage, as a contender. Imperfect, yes. Unproven at the deepest knockout levels, absolutely. But a team with genuine firepower, a coherent playing identity, home field advantage, and a golden generation that has been building toward this exact moment for years. Here's what I'm watching for. Can Alphonso Davies stay fit and fire at his absolute best? When Davies is at peak form, he is a nightmare for any defense on earth. Can Jonathan David deliver the goals Canada will desperately need? Can the midfield, Eustáquio, Koné, the deeper structure, handle the physicality and technical demands of knockout football against the best nations? And can Canada do the thing that only the truly great World Cup stories require? Can they make a nation stop? Make a country drop everything and watch and believe in something together? I think they can. I genuinely do. My prediction? Canada make it out of the group stage. For the first time since 1986, they're in the knockouts. And on the right night, in the right stadium, in front of their own people, they are capable of an upset that would make the football world shake. Put your prediction in the comments. Do Canada go out in the groups? Quarterfinals? Further, this is the most exciting Canadian football team in history. Let's find out what they're made of. If you're enjoying this series, we've been through Australia, Egypt, Iran, Ecuador, and now Canada. Smash that subscribe button, ring the bell, and I'll see you in the next one. The world is coming to Canada. Canada is ready.